honestly more damning truth.
Exactly. Because the real story, it isn't about one static list. It's about a sophisticated international criminal network, one that operated for decades and critically was actively protected or at least enabled by some pretty profound systemic failures. We're talking legal systems, financial institutions, social circles.
Right, and that's what this deep dive is about, pulling back that curtain.
Absolutely. Our aim today is to, cut through the noise, sensationalism, and meticulously deconstruct this whole narrative by sticking to the facts. Verifiable court records, powerful victim testimony, official reports. We really want to separate what's established fact from just, well, rumor and speculation.
Okay, so what can you, the listener, expect from this? We've got a clear plan. First, we're going to look closely at the actual documents that did emerge, things like address books, flight logs, and contrast those with this idea of a fictional client list.
Then second, we have to dissect that 2008 non-prosecution agreement, the NPA, a legal deal that effectively gave Epstein's network a whole decade of, well, impunity, essentially.
And finally, we'll explore what happened after Epstein's death, the sort of fractured justice we saw, looking at both the criminal side and, importantly, the civil accountability that did happen.
By the end, hopefully you'll have a clearer picture, not just what happened, but maybe why these systemic problems allowed it to go on for so long and, why it still matters today.
Okay, let's dive straight into part one and tackle that central myth head on. The client list. After a really exhaustive review, and this is key, the U.S. Department of Justice and the FBI concluded in a memo from July 2025 that no incriminating client list, as popularly imagined, exists.
That's a pretty definitive statement from the feds.
It is. And they also specifically noted finding no credible evidence that Epstein was, blackmailing powerful people using such a list.
Which is fascinating, right? Because it shows how documents that do exist got twisted, misrepresented, really, to feed that specific myth. Take the so-called black books. What were they? Basically 2 personal address books, not ledgers of criminal clients.
That's contact.
Pretty much. Black book #1, the one that surfaced back in 2015, had 93 pages, over 1,500 names, addresses, phone numbers, just his contacts. There was a smaller, older one, too, from the mid-90s with about 349 names.
And the crucial point here.
The crucial point for you listening is this. Seeing a name in there, it only proves association, contact. It doesn't prove complicity in any crimes. It's a really stark example of how, public fascination, maybe a desire for simple answers, can map sinister intent onto something relatively mundane.
Okay, so highly organized Rolodexes, essentially. But what about the flight logs? The Lolita Express logs, those have definitely fueled a lot of speculation.
They certainly have. And those flight logs are real. Passenger manifests from his private jets, especially that Boeing 727 people called the Lolita Express.
Yeah.
And yes, they absolutely confirm travel. Association with prominent figures, people like Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, many others.
But again, the key distinction.
Again, it's vital to stress. On their own, they just document travel. Being on a flight log doesn't automatically mean you participated in or even knew about any criminal acts happening elsewhere. It's proof of travel, not proof of complicity.
Okay. And there was another document too, right? Something about the Palm Beach mansion.
Yes, the Palm Beach Mansion Manual, a really chilling document, actually. 56 pages from around 2005. And this wasn't just about cleaning schedules. It was like a blueprint for secrecy, strict rules for staff, see nothing, hear nothing, say nothing. Explicitly stating, never disclose Mr. Epstein or Mrs. Maxwell's activities or whereabouts to anyone.
Wow.
Yeah, it gives you a direct look into the kind of control and concealment that was central to his operation.
So it's clear from all this, the focus on a client list was perhaps a major misdirection. If it wasn't about a list, what was the real method, the actual grim modus operandi of this network?
The reality was, well, far more insidious and systematic than just a list. It involved luring dozens, scores of minor girls to his homes, particularly in Manhattan and Palm Beach, usually under the guise of giving massages. And as we know from so much victim testimony, these encounters would almost invariably escalate into sexual abuse.
And there was that recruitment element too, wasn't there?
Yes, that's a particularly horrifying part. Victims were often incentivized, pressured even to recruit their friends. They'd get paid a cash finder's fee for each new girl they brought in. It created this self-perpetuating system that just exploited vulnerabilities, blurred lines horribly for the victims themselves. It made it harder for them to see themselves purely as victims. That was the devastating core of his criminal enterprise, not some list.
Okay, now let's shift gears to part two. Because this is where the story takes a turn that's just, well, infuriating. It really highlights the systemic failure. Let's talk about the deal. The legal deal that basically gave this network cover for a decade. Federal authorities, specifically Assistant U.S. Attorney Marie Villafana and the FBI, they had built a really strong case against Epstein in the mid-2000s.
A very strong case.
By May 2007, they'd actually drafted a massive 53-page, 60-count federal indictment. It included federal sex trafficking charges, things that could have meant a life sentence for him.
Could have, but it was never filed.
Never filed. Instead, we got the infamous 2008 Non-Prosecution Agreement, the NPA, negotiated by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Florida at the time, led by Alexander Acosta.
Right. Widely known now as a sweetheart deal, and for good reason. Under its terms, Epstein pleaded guilty to much lesser state charges in Florida. 1 count of soliciting a prostitute, 1 count of procuring a minor for prostitution. That was it.
And the sentence.
He served less than 13 months of an 18-month sentence. And that was in a county jail, not federal prison, with just incredibly extensive work release privileges.
Yeah, that work release was unbelievable. He was allowed out, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, working from his private office?
Pretty much. Allowed to continue his business dealings while technically incarcerated.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, even that wasn't the most damaging part of the NPA.
What was then?
The most consequential part, the part with the longest shadow, was a specific clause buried in that agreement. It granted federal immunity, specifically in the Southern District of Florida, mind you, but federal immunity, to any potential co-conspirators of Epstein.
Any potential co-conspirators? That's incredibly broad.
Incredibly broad. It explicitly named 4 of his key assistants, Sarah Kellen, Adriana Ross, Leslie Groff, Nadia Marcinkova, but the language potentially covered many more. And critically, this clause explicitly shut down the ongoing FBI investigation into the wider network. It wasn't just about Epstein anymore. It protected the whole operation in Florida, federally speaking.
A profound systemic failure, as you said.
Absolutely. It basically slammed the door on federal prosecution for the network in that district.
And adding insult to injury, this whole deal was cooked up in secret, wasn't it? Without telling the victims.
Correct. Negotiated and signed without informing or consulting the victims, which a federal judge, years later, ruled was a direct violation of their rights under the Crime Victims' Rights Act, the CVRA.
What about Acosta's explanation later? Didn't he say something about intelligence connections?
He did make a later claim, which remains unsubstantiated, that he was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to basically leave it alone. But there's no public evidence for that. What is documented is the 2020 report from the Department of Justice's own internal ethics watchdog, the Office of Professional Responsibility, or OPR.
And what did they find?
They found Acosta and his prosecutors exercised poor judgment. That's the official term. And they stated, quote, unequivocally, that the decision to grant that sweeping immunity to the entire network was a profound failure, one that directly enabled, their words, a decade of further abuse.
A decade. So while the system was grappling with that shocking 2008 deal, Epstein essentially walked free